Okay, and so we are here at 12. So Martino, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure. So let me introduce you Jason. He defined himself an overkill cult survivor. As a couple of years ago, he escaped from a 90 hours a week life, and he became a digital nomad, if the definition suits. So his talk today is Happy People Do It Better. So please welcome John.
Yeah. All right. Well, hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I will just go ahead and jump in. So I am, just to give you a little bit of a background here, I'm a digital consultant. I do software, front and back end. I used to run an agency, and then I sold that agency, and I've been doing solo work since. Been doing this for a little over a decade now. Started in graphic design, moved into back end development, and ended up getting pretty heavy into back end development. Recently, I've been playing mostly with JavaScript, doing a lot of React projects and things like that. I've written a few books on nerdy shit. Started with PHP, did a PHP for Absolute Beginners book, then got into PHP and jQuery. And the last book that I wrote was on real time, which was how to use Pusher before WebRTC became something that was stable enough to use. And since then, I learned better than to write books. I just passed a year mustache free. It's coming up on 2 years now. That's relevant, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And also, I have no home address. I'm talking to you guys right now from Thailand. I'm on Koh Samui, which is a small island in the Gulf. I've been here for a couple months, and as of next month, we will be in probably Vietnam, but we haven't made up our minds yet. So that's kind of a little bit of background on me. I've been working remotely since, I've been working remotely for over 10 years. I've been fully remote, like actually no home address and on the road for going on a year now. I think we just crossed 300 days, and I travel with my girlfriend, Marissa. So that is what brings me into what we're talking about today, which is that there's an issue with the way that the workplace is set up, which is that our relationship with work is completely fucked. And I say that because we don't really look at work as being something that's done to serve another purpose. It defines who we are as people. It defines, it becomes the core of our identity. It becomes our only reason to exist. And that is not a healthy way to work. I learned this absolutely the hard way. So this is a picture of me with a mustache. And I show you this because this mustache was not a choice. I didn't get that mustache because I thought, oh, good, I'll grow a mustache. That sounds like a great idea. I got the mustache because I actually, I was physically driven to get this mustache. So let me tell you guys a story. And since we are nerds, I like to tell this story in front of a fire, but I know that fire makes us uncomfortable because we're indoor people. So we'll do this story in front of the warm glow of the Apple logo. Actually, I'm lying. So this is a story about Black Friday, or how I nearly killed my beard. And now this is a story about a Fortune 500 company, which is not Apple. So I'm going to stick with the fire. So back in 2012, I got this project. I got an offer to do a project for a Fortune 500 company, and it was big. It was their Black Friday sales launch site. It was going to be one of the biggest projects of my career to that date. It was going to get a lot of press, and I was really excited to do it. It was going to be really innovative. We were doing a bunch of stuff that with front end that just wasn't really being done yet. So it was a way to innovate. It was a way to show off, and the payday was huge. So I took this project, and I was really excited to do it. Now, when you do a project like this, you always assume there's going to be this much time for design, there will be this much time for development, and then there will be this much time for quality assurance and eventually the launch. And of course, that's almost never the way that it actually goes. So what ended up happening was design went through the development time and then through most of the QA time. And we were left with about a week before when we were supposed to launch this site. Normally, that's not a big deal, but this was Black Friday. And for those of you who aren't in the US, Black Friday is one of the biggest shopping days of the year. You don't miss that deadline. That project either launches or you're a failure. So I decided, come hell or high water, I'm making this project live. It's going to happen. And so I stayed up for 4 days straight. I slept maybe 6 hours total. I would only leave my computer to answer the door to pick up takeout. And I pushed and I pushed and I got it done. It was one of the most insane pushes that I've ever done in my life, the hardest sprint that I've worked on. And the project launched. It went live. It got a lot of really good attention. Everybody was really happy at the company. It ended up winning a couple Addy awards, which I was really proud of. And so, the client was stoked. They made a ton of money. Their sales were really high. In all measurable metrics, that project was a huge success. But shortly afterward, like a couple months later, my girlfriend at the time, she stopped me one morning and she said, "Hey, did you cut yourself shaving? It looks like there's like a spot on your beard." And so I said, "No." I went to the bathroom and I checked, and I had this big patch right under here that had just gone white in my beard. And over the next few weeks, it went from being white to being ultra fine to ultimately falling out. And I ended up with about a quarter-size patch of bald chin. And it grew over time. And then later, another couple months passed, and I got another one over here. And I looked it up, and this is something called alopecia barbadensis. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, but it's when you effectively lose the ability to grow hair on your face. There's no known cause for it, but one of the high probability causes is stress. And that type of work is exactly the kind of stress that would cause this sort of a beard issue. And so, I found myself now with a mustache. This is a bad time, and it's exactly the thing you don't want. But the problem is that I tell that story, and it's obviously a crazy story, but that type of work wasn't actually that unusual for me. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, this is the way that I worked. And so these types of marathon working sessions were pretty average. I mean, a 70 to 80-hour week was pretty usual. And so once my beard started falling out, I realized I really did need to make a change. I wasn't going to survive not making any kind of a change. So I put this story out online, and I realized that I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person who felt this way. I released a story called The Cult of Work You Never Meant to Join. It went up on Medium in April, and within a few days, or within hours of being launched, it hit the front page of Hacker News. It was the top stories on Medium for over a week. It got republished on a handful of other sites. It had, when I wrote this presentation originally, it had over 90,000 views, thousands of social media shares. A bunch of people emailed me and shared similar stories, and that was the part that I thought was the most interesting, was that I got tons of emails from people who said, "I know exactly how you feel, and I do exactly this, and I don't know how to stop." They just felt this unhealthy tether to their jobs, and that there was no choice. There was no way around it. So if we all know that something is broken, why don't we change it? What's going on in the workplace that's keeping us from fixing our relationship with work? And I think there's two parts to that problem. So the first one is that work today, we're in a lot of bad habits. I mean, the first thing is, 94% of knowledge workers, according to a survey that I found, say that 50 plus hours per week is normal. 41% of workers don't use their vacation days. They let vacation time go to waste, and that includes time that rolls over and just can never be used. There's at least one documented case of people faking workaholism. There are guys in a consultancy who will take calls faking being in the office while they're at their kid's soccer game to show that they're working an 80-hour week, even if they're not. Because if they don't show that, they are up to be fired or passed over for promotions. It's showing what we're incentivizing at work. And there's an actual thing for death from overwork. There's a word for it in Japanese that I'm probably going to mispronounce. It's karoshi, which literally translates to death from overwork, according to Wikipedia. So the problem, and this is where I get a little armchair philosophical, is I feel like what happens is the qualities that we like the most about ourselves, we managed accidentally to twist them into something that works against us. And what I mean by that is that we're extremely ambitious and extremely driven, and we work in computers and design, and we work on things that we're really passionate about. So of course we want to sit down and work on these projects and solve these problems. But that ends up having kind of a detrimental effect because we start making these weird excuses that aren't really healthy. We say things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or we blow off our family members for the sake of this project. And we start getting really out of balance, and we focus on work. And our jobs are, companies are amoral. They don't exist in good or evil. They just exist by metrics. So if the only things we're measuring are profits, turnaround times, productivity, then if we're willing to give a company 90 hours a week, it will take it because that looks good on the bottom line. So the problem with this is that it actually makes us worse at our jobs to be workaholics. If we spend these insane hours, if we give it this unreal focus, it causes a lot of adverse effects. So this is some research that's been borne out from the early 1900s onward. It started with studies that resulted in Henry Ford instituting the original 40-hour work week, which is that when people work 60 hours a week versus 40 hours a week, they end up actually getting less done. I apologize, that is broken. Is that my...
Yeah, is somebody currently not muted and making some music? Or is that your own computer, maybe?
I don't think it's me. Nope, it's not me. Sorry, my graphic is broken here, but this is a graph showing over time. When you start with a 60-hour week, your productivity will go up for a short period of time. But after about 4 to 6 weeks, the productivity starts to drop. And that's not because you're getting less done, but it's because the burnout causes a higher exhaustion rate and a higher rate of errors. So you end up doing more work twice or 3 times because you're not doing it right due to a lower level of attention, more exhaustion, and that causes lower quality work, which which means you get less done over time. So when a company is encouraging its employees, even passively encouraging employees to work a 60-hour week, they're actually losing money. So there are multiple things that happen here. So the first one obviously is the negative productivity, but the second one is if you work this hard, nothing can stay interesting if it's all you do. Being a programmer who was a programmer as a hobby before I got into it as a profession, if I did anything, I was a musician, I was an artist, like everything that I've done, if it was the only thing I did, after a period of time, I would burn out and I would be unable to care about doing it anymore. Balance is always key there. Longer hours lead to higher turnover. If your employees are overworked and they don't feel like they're happy in their jobs or valued, or like they have no option but to keep killing themselves to keep these hours, they'll leave and they'll go somewhere else. Creativity starts to drop off when you feel like you have to grind out the things that you're supposed to do. It gets way harder to create creative solutions because the energy's not there. Overall happiness starts to suffer. I think that's just a given. If you feel like the only thing you do is work, that it's difficult to feel like you're living a fulfilling existence. Another fun fact, after 19 hours of being awake, you're the cognitive equivalent of being drunk. If you were to they did a study where they took sleep impaired people and people who were drinking at various levels, and as they started measuring their ability to do cognitive tasks, so memory and hand-eye coordination and the ability to perform complex puzzles and those sorts of things, they found out that after about 19 hours awake, your cognitive performance was roughly equivalent to having a blood alcohol level of 0.1%, which in the United States will get you a driving under the influence ticket, which is a prison time. So when we look at somebody and, somebody shows up to work and they've had 4 beers, they're definitely going to get fired. But when somebody shows up to work after only sleeping for 4 hours, they're just as impaired. But for some reason, we stigmatize that differently. And we say, oh, you're a hard worker. You're doing a great job. Way to burn the midnight oil. And in the rough sense, it's equivalent. I would be just as good at my job if I shotgunned 4 beers before I started as if I'd only slept 4 hours the night before. And I think that's something it's really hard to grasp because, sleep doesn't ever seem that important, but it really, truly is. And so, all of this so far has said that it's the workplace's problem. The workplace is causing these things. But really, like I said before, our habits drive us to do these sorts of things. Our qualities nudge us toward this, and the workplace only mirrors what we do. So that can make us feel like we're stuck. How do we get out of that, and how do we get out of this cycle? If the workplace does what we want to do and we want to be this way, then what can we do to break that cycle? There are a few things that I think you can do that make a huge difference, and they don't require completely changing your life or making a huge effort to overhaul your productivity system or anything. They're small changes, and it's mostly about being aware of what's going on and where your time is spent. So there are companies today that have a really healthy culture, and you may have heard of some of these, others you may not have. So New Relic is a company that they do server monitoring, and they're growing very, very quickly. They're extremely prolific in terms of being able to just get market saturation. And they actually punish their employees if they work more than their allotted time. If they find out that somebody's checking in code after hours, they'll get written up for it. They don't get rewarded for putting in time on the weekend. Buffer is another one. They kind of let people set their own hours. So some of their people work longer hours, but a lot of their people work 30 hours. They get enough done, and Buffer's totally cool with that. And they do this cool thing where they're very transparent, which I think is great. Precision Nutrition is a company that I contract for. Everybody at that company is remote, and everything they do is results driven, which I'll talk about more in a minute. Full Contact is sort of famous for they introduced this idea of paid time off, where they would offer their employees, in addition to their paid vacation time, I think it was a $7,000 bonus for actually taking their vacation time. So if they took their vacation time and didn't check email and didn't do any work and were actually disconnected for their vacation time, they would get a monetary bonus. If they used email or tried to work while they were gone, they would not receive that bonus. So it was a way of incentivizing people to really disconnect for the time that they were supposed to be disconnected. Envision is another app. Mozilla, Basecamp, Automatic. They've all got good remote cultures. They've got good relationships with work for the most part. And there are lots more. This is a short list. So how are they doing it? The first one is to really keep an eye on what we're doing to measure value. One of the things that is critical about what we do as designers and developers, and the work that we do, marketing and all this stuff, it's results-based work. If I can build you a website that turns a revenue, I did the job. It doesn't matter if I did it in 100 hours or if I did it in 15 minutes, if it gets you the result that you wanted. So that's what we're being paid for. I'm being paid for my experience and my ability to deliver results, not for the hours that my butt is in a chair. So measuring the hours as a primary source of value to a company is a great way to drive really unhealthy working culture. The idea of measuring by time basically says, I don't trust you. It says, I need you to put in these 8 hours, because if you don't put in 8 or more hours, I don't think you will get the job done. And that puts it's a weird power dynamic. It measures quantity over quality. There's a good like quick analogy for this is if you've got 2 employees who work functionally equivalent jobs and they're given an identical task, if employee number 1 and employee number 2 are both salaried at $50,000 a year, one of them takes a month to do it, and one of them takes 2 weeks to do it, the person who did it faster is effectively getting paid less to do that job, because those extra 2 weeks between when they finish and when the other person finishes will be filled with busy work or with another project. So they're being paid less per task because they're more productive. So that incentivizes people to go more slowly. Because if you are getting paid only for the time you're present, then there's an incentive to be slow, because you don't want to get stuck with busy work and paperwork and doing all the stuff that nobody else has time to get to. It punishes efficiency for exactly that reason. If I finish a project early and you don't have the next project ready for me, or I have to wait for the rest of the people on my team to finish, then I'm basically told, oh, there's a bunch of paperwork that we need to get to. Can you take care of that while we wait for everybody else? And now I'm being punished. It rewards inefficiency by, again, incentivizing people to go more slowly. So if I get my task and I finish it quickly, I shouldn't be punished with more tasks. If I get told your job for today is to finish X and I finish X, see you tomorrow. And that is a way for the people who are working and the people who are assigning the work to get into a good flow and figure out who needs, the most work and who needs less work, and how to really manage that stuff. It's a meritocracy, and that is a more effective way to boost morale, because the people who produce the most, who provide the most value, are given the most things to do, and that shows what they're able to show what they're capable of and actually be rewarded, as opposed to being punished. Next, we need to make sure we're focusing on the right goals. Our goal when we get to work is to do the best work possible, not to do the most work regardless of the quality. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that we're sleeping. We need to make sure that we've got time off. We need to make sure that we're healthy. We need to make sure that we still give a shit about what we're working on. And we have to remember, success is a long road. We can't, if we look at everything as a sprint and say, hey guys, we just got to do 60 hours for these next 2 weeks to get to this deadline, and then we ignore everything else to get to that deadline, and afterwards we go, oh shit, we've got this other deadline. So I know we said it was just 60 hours until now, but it's going to be 60 hours for the next 2 weeks just to get to this deadline. You never get to the end of that lifestyle. You have to break that culture. And as we saw, or we didn't see because my chart was broken, over time, we'll end up getting less done. And the product that comes out will be worse by setting these short-term sprints and ignoring the long-term effects of overworking. So then, in order to incentivize this, because nothing ever works if you just say this is the way it should be, you have to actually incentivize it. You have to reward the right behaviors. So when you set these sane guidelines, you have to follow them. When you say you can only work 8 hours, and then somebody works 10, there has to be a disincentive to do that. And when somebody does work their 8 hours, or when somebody is given a results-based project, the reward needs to be for following the guideline, for doing the thing that everybody wants done. So if the goal is to work quickly, reward people for working quickly. Don't drop extra work on their desk because they look like they haven't got enough to do. you have to let the team choose how they work best. I think this is where remote work really shines. If you work well in an office with multiple people, there should be an office environment where you can go and work. Co-working spaces are great for this. That's something that I do now, is I find places where the other expats are doing their work, and I'll go and I'll work there sometimes when I feel like I need a social environment. Most days I work best when I'm off on my own with headphones in, blasting some kind of white noise and not making eye contact with anybody for 6 to 8 hours. And by doing that, I get my best work done. But if I had other people interrupting me or nudging me, then I can't get my best work done. So it's important that I can choose the way that works best for me, and that I'm given the right to choose by the companies that contract me. The most effective management tool is trust. And this is something that I have kind of espoused from the get-go. In my consultancy, I was always results driven, to the point where it probably worked to my detriment, because I just gave you a task and then I'd walk away. So I think there may be a way to balance what I did, which is, here's a list and now I'm not going to talk to you again until the day before the deadline, and the micromanaging, always up your ass, I need an update every 15 minutes kind of management. But by trusting somebody to do the job, they feel ownership over it. They feel like they're invested in it. It's their responsibility. It's not the boss's task that's going to be micromanaged into the ground. It's the boss has assigned this to me, or the client or the manager or whoever has assigned this to me. I am responsible for getting it done. And if I don't do it, no one else will. And so it creates that sense of ownership that allows you to really excel in that type of environment, as opposed to feeling micromanaged, which just sucks the fun out of anything. Finally, you got to regain control of your time. This is one of the hardest things that I had to go through, because I'm such a sucker for just sitting down and working for endless amounts of time. We're the only people who get to choose what we do. So at the outset, we have to decide what we're going to prioritize. Our lives are more than just work. They're a Venn diagram of our personal health, our social health, and our work health, and how that ties into our financial and everything else. And if we don't have a good balance of those things, if we're dying literally because we don't take care of our bodies, or we're completely isolated and cut off from the people around us because we never talk to anybody that we're close to and don't spend any time with our friends, it's just as bad for us as if we didn't show up to work or turned in something that would get us fired. It's the same negative benefit. We can just measure how much money is in the bank more readily than we can measure how much friendship we have in our lives, or how many years we have left to live. So it's very important that we actually measure the stuff that does make a big difference to us. So for that, to that end, when you're done with your work, try to be done with your work. The idea of shutting off, of not having your email going through dinner, of not waking up or going to sleep checking email, or trying to get one more thing done, falling asleep at your computer, bringing your laptop to bed to try to get one more thing knocked out before you fall asleep. That sort of stuff it doesn't make you more efficient. It honestly makes you less efficient. Taking real breaks creates space that allows you to do more work. Control your attention. This is kind of ties into that same thing. When I was at the point where my beard fell out and died, I noticed that I was having a lot of trouble staying focused because I was always working. I would wake up in the morning to check my email, and I would check my email as I walked down the street to get coffee, and I would be responding to email as I walked back with my coffee to my computer. I would be on my computer until I needed to eat, and then I would take my phone and check email through lunch. I try to respond to emails during lunch so that I could get back and actually work on something. And that would go until then I'd be on my computer until it got too late for me to keep my eyes open. And so I'd try to respond to a couple more emails on my phone in bed before I fell asleep. I was never disconnected. It never ended. And I might be an extreme case, but I'm not sure that I'm that extreme, because almost everybody in the knowledge work world who gets surveyed is guilty of checking their email off the clock. So the constant attention is what leads to this pandemic that people talk about of the ever shrinking attention span. It's not that we're incapable of paying attention to things. It's that we don't give ourselves space to pay attention to things because we've convinced ourselves that we need to be on all the time. So to that end, I have since disabled every notification on my phone except for actual phone calls that come through and my text messages, because there are only about 6 people left in the world who have my phone number. So they are the only people who can actually interrupt me during the day. I have regular intervals where I'll check email, where I will check Facebook and Twitter. I check those during my breaks. And when I'm done for the day, I am done. I close my computer. I leave it at home. I often leave my phone here when I go out. And I try to take time to just be a real human in the real world, meat space for anybody over the age of 30. So that's critical. And so to that end, I've actually adopted a policy now where I will only spend about 40 to 50 hours a week on a computer total. And I try to make that include my time on Netflix and Facebook and Twitter and everything. So my working hours end up being 30 to 35 hours. And then I've got maybe 10 to 15 hours of entertainment time, social media, Netflix, stuff like that, throughout the course of a full week. And one of the ways that I do that is by taking one day completely off of work. So a weekend day, I just leave my computer closed and I try to go outside, or I'll read a book instead, or I'll go, make an excuse to meet my friends, do anything other than be on a computer. My entire life revolves around computers. So it's very important to me to remind myself that I'm not only the person behind the computer. I'm also a real boy. Because so all of this, it does take effort to make these changes and to realign your relationship with work, but it's absolutely worth it because we are extraordinarily lucky in that we get to do things that are interesting and exciting to us as a job. We make a paycheck for doing things that we were probably doing as a hobby before we started collecting a paycheck to do it. We create awesome things out of nothing, out of thin air. Whether you're a designer or a developer or a marketer, you're basically taking the ideas in your brain, the ideas in your client's brain, and then you're moving around dots on a screen until something magical happens. We add more beauty to the world, whether it's in more efficient systems, in better marketing plans, in more attractive websites, more attractive apps. And that's something that we really need, is more beauty in the world. So let's make sure that we actually survive to get to enjoy what we do. That's the end of my presentation here. I've got, if you look online, this is online at on my GitHub page, which is down here at the bottom if you can read it. It's a repo called Happy People Do It Better. If you want to look at any of the research, it's available here. And then how are we doing on time? It's about 35 minutes. All right, so that was about what I expected it to be. Did anybody have questions, or Martino, do you want to jump back in? I don't really know what happens from here.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Well, we usually open the mic to the audience, so maybe you can switch to the audience view so you can see some of the faces, and if someone have a question or a comment, please.
I do. First of all, great talk, very inspiring. I think it's awesome to know and share with people that are actually managed to do digital nomads. That's one of the things that I want to accomplish in the future. I just have 2 quick questions. The first one is, how do you manage your time for side projects? I don't know if you prefer maybe personal choice, early morning or late night, because you have to work throughout the day. And the second one is, of the cities that you have visited or live in, what are the most exciting one, or maybe the city that you say, man, I want to go back to that city and live a little bit more?
Well, I'll answer that one first because it's quick. I have 2 favorite cities so far. One has been Barcelona, Spain. It's just been a great place to be, and I really enjoyed the food and the culture and the people there. And the second is Zagreb, Croatia, because it just blew me away as a city. It was awesome food, awesome people, very, very, very cool, and extremely affordable. Then to answer your first question, so the way that I look at everything is as a standalone project. So my professional projects, my side projects, personal projects, anything that's going to require me to be on the computer. So I run a blog. I'm currently building a couple apps for fun, and then I'm also building a couple apps professionally. And in doing that, I have to make time throughout the week. And so the approach that I've taken is to break my day up into 3 to 4 90-minute blocks. And I do what's called context batching. So I group all my tasks according to the type of work that they are. So if it's development, I will group all of my development related tasks into development. I then group all of my my other types of tasks, like my email communication, things like that, into another context group. And then if I have any design related work, that's a third context, and then writing is a fourth context. And then I kind of build my different context related to-dos out in what I think I can get done within 90 minutes. That 90 minutes is based on some research that it's called ultradian rhythms, which is similar to circadian rhythms, which is kind of the way your body's REM cycle regulates itself. And there's research that says that goes throughout the day. And I just found, I mean, really, I don't know anything about the science. I just know that for me, I found that that's about as long as I can focus before my body starts to, I start to get stressed when I work 2 hours. And I don't know if you guys have done this, but when you work on something and you really get lost in it, and like 4 hours later, you wake up and you're like, oh man, I can't believe I've been working for 4 hours. And so you stand up and walk around, and then you're like a zombie. You can't remember how to be a human anymore, and you're foggy and your brain just kind of shuts down. I found that if I go much longer than 90 minutes, that foggy zombie mode happens, and I really only get one solid working block a day. So 4 hours is about as much as I can do. If I do 90 minutes with a 5 to 15 minute break in between each 90-minute section where I get up and walk away from the computer, then I have 4 of those blocks, which is 6 hours. So about 150% of the valid productivity. And for each of those 90-minute blocks, I set a timer. I shut off everything. My phone goes into airplane mode. My computer goes into do not disturb mode. Email, social media, everything gets closed. And for that 90 minutes, I only work on whatever it was that I said I was going to work on. And I've gotten better over time at assigning myself roughly 90 minutes worth of work. So what that allows me to do is first of all, I can work simultaneously on 4 projects, because I can do 1 batch per day on 4 different projects, which has been really effective. Or if I'm really pushing on something else, I can do 4 blocks on the same project and really make a lot of headway. And that also means that for only 90 minutes at a time am I ever unreachable. So when I get out of a 90-minute block, I stand up, I close my computer, I walk away. But for 5 minutes, either immediately following the block or immediately before my next one, I'll really quickly, check text, check email, check social media, see if anybody needs anything or has any questions. And if they don't, then I shut back down, go into a 90-minute quiet mode, get more stuff done, and come back. And I found that allows me to stay way ahead on my work. Like, I typically am able to get everything that I need to do professionally done. Stuff that used to take me 60 hours, I typically get it done in 25 or less, which means that I've got 10 to 15 hours left to work on side projects without even cutting into my Netflix time. So I have a whole article written on that, that I can share if you want, which is I call it scheduling for maximum productivity. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it was perfect. Thanks. Yeah, I would like to read that article.
Awesome. I'll find the link.
Thanks.
Did anybody else have a question?
I have a question about the nomad way of life. And how do you handle the internet connectivity problem? Because I suppose there are places that doesn't have internet, but you need to make some git push or something like that.
To be totally honest, it's so much more stable than you might think. I mean, I'm in a third world country on a tiny island where 3 or 4 times a week, they have the power go out. My internet connection here is roughly 2.5 megabits down and 0.5 megabits up. I've been able to host. I mean, I've like been able to talk to you guys. I have video meetings with all of my clients, and I'm able to manage. You know, like one of the projects that I'm working on is a WebRTC powered React app that does real time video. So I've been able to work on all of that without having any issues from Thailand, from Croatia, from everywhere that I've been. So there are places in the world that I won't go. Like right now, I won't go to Central America because like I was in Costa Rica and the internet was so non-dependable that I felt uncomfortable trying to work there. And I've heard it's gotten better, but I haven't seen any like verified speed tests yet. So I'm still reluctant to go back there. But most of Southeast Asia is actually set up better than what I'm used to in the US. Like in Chiang Mai, they're on fiber. So the internet has not been a problem, and it's only getting better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have one. Hello.
Yeah.
So I love my work, okay? And I think everyone's here loves his work, and I'm pretty sure. The thing is, my question is, I probably do a little bit of overwork, but the point is that sometime on Saturdays or Sundays or, I don't know, random moments, I'm like, I just want to go back to work. I just want to do it because it was fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have my PS4. I love playing games. But sometimes I'm just like, it's really fun. I really want to do that piece of work that is missing. And I don't feel any pressure from anyone from not doing it or doing it, right? So I'm like, you think this is a healthy thinking or state, I would say?
I think, I don't think there's a right answer, because I think everybody has their own equilibrium. Because I know for me, I love working on projects. And when I have downtime, my first instinct is to pop open my laptop and start working on a problem that I'm having fun solving. So where I think it's important for me to draw the line is when I feel like I'm turning down other parts of my life in favor of working. Like if I feel like I'm like my friends want to talk and I'm saying, no, I can't talk. I gotta go work on this project. Or if I'm like weighing things that I want to do and I've been working for 40 hours this week and I also wanted to go hiking and I haven't gone hiking yet, then I try to prioritize the thing that I also wanted to do but I haven't done. But if I have no plans, and like I'm not going to sit in my room and stare at the wall because I feel like I work too much. I try to keep a sane, a finger on the pulse of whether I'm working because I like to work or whether I'm working because it's my knee-jerk response to idle hands. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
I actually have a question about sort of friendship. When you're moving all over the place, you can't really, well, maybe you can. How do you deal with not having really close friends that you can actually see in person?
That has been a challenge. I mean, it's easier for me because I travel with my girlfriend, so I feel like I kind of have an unfair advantage in that point. But it has been a challenge to see like good friends. So we've attempted to mitigate that with almost everybody that we know is in a similar position financially, so they're able to take a trip every year. And so what we've been trying to do is figure out where they're going to go, and then we'll try to end up in the same vicinity. And so when they go take their trip, we'll go be around so that we can hang out without hijacking their trip. Or in a couple cases, we've decided that people are going to come out to make it more affordable, that we'll split the cost of a place and they'll rent it with us. So like if we go and rent in like we were in Zagreb, and we were able to rent a place for a month for like $1,200, which compared to my rent in Portland is pretty cheap. So if we were able to rent that place and then split it with a friend, that means instead of spending $200 a night for a hotel, which everybody's used to in the US when they take a vacation, they could spend $600 for a week or 2 weeks to stay in an apartment in a city that they've always wanted to go visit. So it makes their vacation cheaper. So obviously that's like the edge case, because not everybody can come visit, and that's not very often. But the other thing that we've had to do is a lot of video meetings. So I spend a reasonable amount of time, like an hour or two a week, in video calls with my family and friends, just making sure that, you know, we get some kind of FaceTime and like are able to talk and actually make eye contact, well, as much eye contact as you can make through a video call, and just kind of like see each other, which has helped. But it definitely is, you know, like we're planning right now to try to make it back to the US and do this like whirlwind tour to go see all of our families and friends and try to actually get some in-person time. But the friendship aspect hasn't been as challenging as we thought, because the remote worker population is really strong, and the number of people who have been able to go nomadic is like, it's staggering to me. I thought we were going to go out and there'd be, you know, like 100 or 2 people who were out doing this, and every once in a while you'd get lucky and one of them would be in the same town. But we were in Chiang Mai, Thailand, which Chiang Mai is kind of a digital nomad hub, and there were probably 300 people there who were not from Thailand, people from all over the world who had figured out that you can live in Thailand on about $1,000 US a month. And that's for like your rent, your food, your entertainment, your everything. And so they go there and they run their companies that way. And if you're in the US, you can actually avoid US income tax by staying out of the US for over a year. So there's this huge incentive to go do it. But so we were able to find a lot of people to hang out with. They weren't close friendships by any means, but you can always find a lot of people to talk to who have similar interests, who are doing similar sorts of things, because the majority of the digital nomad population is designer, developer, marketer types. So more than likely you're going to have some common ground, and the conversations are pretty easy. I sort of answered your question. That was kind of a roundabout.
No, yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else have questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
You spoke about starting to measure results instead of attendance. So, do you have any suggestion about how to be more effective to measure results?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I like to measure my results is so I still do track my own time, but I don't track it for professional purposes. I track it more to keep a finger on the pulse of how much time it realistically takes me to do things that I'm charging people money for. And I use that to make realistic value assessments of the tasks that I'm doing. So I know what I'm worth, and I know what they need me to do. And using past data, I can make a reasonable assumption that it will take me this amount of time to do this amount of work. And so I can then tell them, you know, I work with my client and say, okay, so based on my experience and based on what you need, I know that I should be able to complete this task in roughly this amount of time, as long as it adheres to this scope. And as long as we meet that scope, I'm willing to commit to that timeline and will commit to this price. So we effectively, instead of saying I'm going to work 45 hours, I say I can get it to you by next Friday and I will charge you this many dollars. And when they agree on that, then that means as long as I'm on track for Friday, they don't care if I don't start working on it until Friday morning, as long as it gets done, because I never mentioned the hours. And so the way to manage that internally, like with contractors, is that instead of saying, here's the beginning of a project and I expect to see you in 2 weeks with the end of the project, you can set kind of realistically, you can say, all right, so I think that this project is worth about this much money. If everybody agrees, then you can kind of say like, all right, this is the value. This is the value of the result. So now you don't have to track time for monetary purposes. And in the short term, in order to make sure the project's on track, you set milestone results. And the way that I like to do it is I prefer to have a daily deliverable. So what's the thing that you can get done today? And if you're doing that thing, then we know you're on track for the deadline 2 weeks from now. And so that made it a little more, it was easier to keep a finger on the pulse of what was happening in the project without having to micromanage, and I didn't need to care if one of my contractors was working, 8 hours or 16 hours, because we decided as a team that they were going to get this deliverable done. And as long as we didn't get a surprise where it turns out that was way beyond the scope that we initially thought, or there was way more involved than we were planning on, then we could say very safely, all right, you didn't get this done today. We both thought that this was possible for you to get done today. I don't care how many hours you work, but what went wrong? And if the answer, which usually the answer is, I didn't have enough focus and I didn't work on it, so it didn't get done because I blew it off, then that becomes a way to gauge performance. Like, consistently has trouble meeting set deadlines. Because I can also game a time clock and appear to be busy for 8 hours if I'm dedicated to it. You can't game results. So it ends up being kind of a win on both ends of the table, because as a consultant, I don't have to do a task and then remember to write down how much time I did doing that task. And as a manager, I don't have to read somebody's timesheet and then do mental math to figure out, did they do enough work to merit the amount of money that they just got paid for this time. Like, it's, you get to work together to reach a point that you both feel is fair. I think a website should take roughly 40 hours at this scope, and it should be worth roughly this many dollars. And therefore, we both agree that 40 hours should take about a week and a half to deliver. So today is Monday. I want it by next Wednesday. This is, these are the deadlines in between. I think you should have these milestones each day. And therefore, as long as you're comfortable with that and I'm comfortable with that, we've established the value, we've established the pace, and I never need to look at your timesheet. I just know what your deliverables are and what the results are that you're going to deliver between now and a completed project. It takes a little more planning up front, but I've also found that it eliminates one of the major problems when you're working with contractors, which is when I have a project and I hand it to a contractor, if I'm not 100% clear on what the goal is, they don't feel empowered to make that decision, because ultimately it's not their decision. So if they run into a roadblock, there's a little bit of hand-wringing and delay and putting it off because they don't want to overstep their authority. Whereas if you have a daily deliverable and they get hung up on their daily deliverable, you can very, very quickly sort out that problem. And it also forces you as both a look at each project in the more finer into the finer details, where you can really find out, okay, so if we need to break this into daily deliverables, you're going to need to do this and then this and then this and then this. So a lot of those initial hangups that would show up later in the project get exposed early while you're in the planning phase, which keeps everybody rolling and makes sure that you're going out with a very clear idea of what's happening. So in my opinion, it's been more effective in managing money and managing time, in avoiding confusion during the project, and in keeping people feeling empowered, because it just kind of all around leaves people with more clarity. And I think clarity is key to being effective as a remote worker. Did that answer your question? I feel like I kind of got off topic there.
Yeah, you definitely answered my question, and you gave us, I think, a lot of stuff to think about during this weekend, because that was very, very interesting. We are running out of time, so Kuti, do you want to give some final remarks?
I feel like I've just talked to you guys for close to an hour now, so. I don't really have much else to add. I think I've spent a lot of time on both sides of the spectrum. I spent the beginning of my career believing that the more hours that I put in and the more heroic effort that I made, the further I would get in my career. And I drove myself into the ground for a long time, chasing after what I thought was an ideal. I bought into the idea that being busy was the most important thing, and it cost me a lot of my health, and it cost me a lot of my time, and it put a lot of stress on relationships in my life. And when I shifted and I went the other way, I started out actually trying to be self-destructive. I was attempting to destroy my career because I had decided that it was unhealthy for me. And so I refused to be accessible by email, and I refused to be ruled by my work. And I refused to let that be the only thing that I cared about or that I let matter. And I thought that my career was going to get worse. I thought I was going to end up making less money. I thought I would be less successful. And what I actually found was I'm able to get more done, and I'm happier, I'm healthier. I've freed up time to be able to go out and, I've been regularly going to the gym, which I never had time for before. I've been able to travel. I've been able to keep up relationships with people that previously were strained because I never saw them. And as you can see, my beard grew back. So it really paid me back in every imaginable way. I'm earning more consistently. I'm happier with my work, and I feel better in my life, kind of all around, as a direct result of making the change that made me more mindful of where I was spending my time at work and why I was spending my time at work. I work because I want to have a better life, because I want to have more freedom. I want to have more opportunities to do more things that I'm excited about. And if my work is preventing me from doing things in my life, then it's actually become the opposite of what I originally wanted to work for. So I just think it's important to try to keep that perspective and remember that your job is a tool. It's not the reason you exist.
Thank you.
I think it's a fabulous, fabulous way to end this, and to wish everybody a great weekend. Thanks so much for the wisdom and the sharing. I think that leaves a lot of things for us to be considering and understanding how to do this in the right kind of balance in order to achieve your ultimate ambitions. So thanks so much for this, and I hope everybody have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Nice weekend.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.